The Gas Monkey ride is still going strong, and we're having a good time with it.
At 55, Richard Rawlings isn't just addressing the whispers, he's dismantling them. After years of high-octane fame, sudden exits, and hushed courtroom drama, the fast and loud icon has finally broken his silence. But this isn't a polished press statement. It's a raw, unapologetic truth that ties together every strange move he's made. From walking away from Discovery to the real reason behind his rapid-fire car sales, Rawlings has confirmed the rumors. And what he's revealed pulls the brakes off everything we thought we knew about him. The man behind the mayhem, Richard Rawlings, unmasked. Richard Rawlings didn't just build a brand. He created a high-octane world that turned wrenches, wrecks, and raw ambition into primetime gold. Fast and Loud wasn't just a TV show, it was a movement, a roaring machine fueled by personality, drama, and undeniable charisma. But what fans didn't see were the tensions tightening beneath the hood. And when Rawlings finally broke his silence in 2023, what spilled out wasn't a well-timed career shift. It was a blunt, unapologetic reckoning. He didn't ease into the announcement. There were no soft goodbyes or sugar-coated thank yous. Just one sharp declaration: I'm done. It wasn't about walking away, it was about walking free. Because behind the flashing lights, behind the carefully clipped scenes, was a man who had been silenced, reshaped, and increasingly shut out of his own creation. The decision to leave the Discovery Channel didn't come from burnout, it came from betrayal. Rawlings admitted what insiders had whispered for years. Fast and Loud didn't die of natural causes. It was stifled by boardroom decisions, creative restrictions, and a growing disconnect between the man on screen and the forces behind it. He wasn't just a host. He was the soul of the show. Yet slowly, that soul was boxed in by contracts that diluted his voice, and producers more concerned with playing safe than pushing boundaries. While he smiled for the camera, off-screen battles were chipping away at everything he'd built. He spoke of deals that soured and partnerships that crumbled, of legal wars that didn't just cost him millions, but nearly erased the very identity he'd poured into Gas Monkey Garage. Behind the show's thrilling pace was a brutal reality of closed-door clashes, creative handcuffs, and whispered betrayals that dragged on longer than anyone knew. And once the final season aired, Rawlings decided he'd had enough of the silence. This wasn't a fall from grace. It was a deliberate dismantling of a myth. Richard wasn't retreating from fame. He was tearing down the polished image that no longer reflected who he was. What fans were witnessing was not just the end of a show, it was the rebirth of the man who made it legendary. The swagger was still there, but now it came with scars, stories, and a readiness to speak without filters or fear. The Richard Rawlings, now stepping into the spotlight, wasn't here to entertain. He was here to expose, to reclaim, and to confront. And if the fallout came with it, so be it. He welcomed the fire, because the truth was long overdue. Gone was the carefully packaged persona. What remained was something far more dangerous. A man who had nothing left to lose and everything to say. And this time, the story wouldn't be edited. But to understand how Richard Rawlings became the kind of man willing to burn down his own empire just to speak his truth, we have to rewind. Before the fame, before Fast and Loud, before anyone knew his name. His story didn't start with roaring engines or television cameras. It began in a modest Texas neighborhood, shaped by grit, rebellion, and a father who lived fast long before Richard did. But what if the real reason he walked away was something no one saw coming? Keep watching to find out. Where the wheels first turned. But to truly understand how Richard Rawlings became the man who burned rubber on screen and torched expectations off it, we need to rewind to a time before cameras, before custom builds, and booming catchphrases. Back to Fort Worth, Texas, in the early 70s. Back to a boy with grease on his fingers and dreams that didn't match the paycheck-to-paycheck world around him. Richard was born on March 30th, 1969, into a world that demanded hard work and offered very little in return. His neighborhood wasn't the kind that bred fame. It was the kind where fathers worked 2 or 3 jobs just to keep the lights on. And yet, even in that tight space of struggle, his father made room for one thing: a car or motorcycle of his own. Not because he needed it, but because it was his reward, his escape. Richard paid close attention to that. More than the horsepower or the chrome, it was the idea that you could earn something beautiful just by refusing to give up. At 3 in the morning, while most kids his age were still dreaming, Richard was wide awake. He'd hop into the cold seat of his father's car, a bag of newspapers in the back, and they'd set off through silent neighborhoods. The heater barely worked. They barely talked. But those drives weren't about bonding over conversation. They were about discipline, effort, the kind that nobody applauded because nobody saw it. After school, he'd do it all over again. Weekends, he rode his bike to collect payments. The money mattered. But something else caught his eye more: the cars. Richard didn't just notice them, he memorized them. He knew which house had the Camaro with the dented bumper, who owned the pristine El Camino, and when someone upgraded from a Buick to a Cadillac. People were surprised a kid could know so much. But Richard's answer was always the same: "I pass your house twice a day. How wouldn't I know?" By 14, most kids were dreaming of getting their learner's permit. Richard had already saved enough to buy his first car, a green 1974 Mercury Comet. It was ugly. He loved it. That Comet didn't just take him places, it announced him. At school, he'd whip it around the lot, smoke curling from its tires as he did donuts that turned heads and made statements. That wasn't about showing off. That was a kid making noise in a world that had told him to stay quiet. And that Comet? It was just the start. Within 3 years, he was on to his third car, a sleek black 1977 Bandit Trans Am that looked like it had driven straight off a movie set. He didn't just drive it, he leveraged it. By 1987, Richard wasn't just the car guy at Eastern Hills High. He was already flipping vehicles like a seasoned dealer, buying low, fixing just enough, selling high. 20 cars before graduation. More profit than most of his classmates made working part-time jobs. It wasn't a hobby. It wasn't even just hustle. It was instinct. A teenager building a brand without a business plan. Only drive. And an obsession with value that others overlooked. And now, with more stories from those early years surfacing from friends, neighbors, and forgotten high school parking lots, the origin story becomes clearer. What was it about that boy on a bike with a newspaper sack that morphed into a mogul willing to risk it all? What pushed him to chase speed before stability, chaos before comfort? Which brings us to the next defining moment, the moment life handed him its first real curve. Turning pain into power. Richard Rawlings was just 22 when the streets of Fort Worth nearly stole everything from him. It was the early 1990s, and he was behind the wheel of a sleek 1965 Ford Mustang 2+2 Fastback. His pride and joy, a collector's dream. That night, while driving through a tough neighborhood near Oakland Boulevard, he was ambushed. Carjackers surrounded him, yanked at the door, and tried to pull him out. He fought back hard. In the scuffle, a gun fired. The bullet tore through his shoulder and ripped down his arm. It was a miracle he survived. Most would have given up on the car life. Richard did the opposite. He doubled down. His determination wasn't born overnight. Between 1988 and 1990, long before fame, tattoos, or television, Richard lived a life packed with purpose. Before turning 21, he had already worn 3 uniforms: police officer, firefighter, and paramedic. And for a while, Richard followed that advice. Then came an unexpected encounter in 1988 that shook up his path. While delivering Miller Lite to a local bar, a man he assumed was just another customer asked about his future. Richard said he wanted to join law enforcement, but couldn't afford the academy. The man replied bluntly, "Hell, I'm the mayor of so-and-so city." 17 days later, Richard was enrolled at the North Texas Police Academy. He started as a cop in Alvarado, then became a firefighter in Coppell. Each role taught him how to stay steady in chaos, skills that would later serve him in the unpredictable world of business. Still, by age 25, he was restless. He sold everything, bought a Jeep, and headed to California in search of a new beginning. 6 months later, he returned to Texas, broke, tattooed, pierced, without the Jeep, and sleeping on his sister's couch. But he didn't let rock bottom define him. It sharpened his focus. In 1999, with no printing experience but a deep understanding of branding, he launched Lincoln Press in Dallas. Backed by a $100,000 business loan, he built the company from scratch. By 2004, it was thriving. So much so that he promised a Lamborghini Gallardo to the first client who spent $1 million. It worked. The business exploded. When he finally sold it, he walked away with the capital and clarity to chase the dream that had always pulled at him, building a life around cars. Gas Monkey's journey from grit to glory. When Richard Rawlings sold his printing business, Lincoln Press, he wasn't chasing comfort. He was chasing combustion. The year was 2002, and what he had in mind wasn't just another garage. He envisioned a place that could blend old-school car culture with fresh energy, a brand that felt as raw and loud as a V8 engine. With every penny he had, he opened the first Gas Monkey garage in Dallas. It wasn't much to look at. No air conditioning, no running water, just a small workshop, an idea, and an engine-light dream flickering in the dark. But Rawlings never counted on comfort. What he had was drive. He and a few scrappy mechanics took to the road, hitting every car show, rally, and trade event they could find. They weren't just showing off, they were hustling, shaking hands, making sure people remembered the name Gas Monkey. And slowly, they did. In May 2007, Rawlings and his longtime friend and business partner Dennis Collins decided to make some serious noise. They went after the Cannonball Run, a legendary, borderline mythical coast-to-coast record that had stood unbroken since 1979. It wasn't for money or headlines. It was for glory. Armed with a modified Ferrari 550 Maranello, rigged with extra fuel tanks to minimize pit stops, they left Manhattan under the cover of night. 31 hours and 59 minutes later, they rolled into Redondo Beach, California, breaking a record that had lasted nearly 3 decades. It was reckless, bold, and borderline illegal, but it was real, and it was fast. Their feat didn't just catch attention, it earned Rawlings a nod from Jay Leno himself. In the world of cars, Leno isn't just respected, he's revered. That stamp of approval gave Rawlings the kind of validation he couldn't buy. It wasn't fame, not yet, but it was something close. The right people started watching. Between 2002 and 2012, while the garage struggled to stay afloat, Rawlings never stopped building. Not just cars, but a vision. He battled through broken tools, unreliable staff, and tight margins. He couldn't afford mistakes. Every project mattered. Every flip needed to count. All the while, he kept pitching a TV show idea, one that would take classic car restoration out of the shadows and into the living rooms of everyday people. Networks passed. They didn't think the idea had enough fuel, so Rawlings kept doing what he did best, hitting the pavement, turning wrenches, and never shutting up about Gas Monkey. Then came June 6, 2012. Fast and Loud hit the airwaves on the Discovery Channel, and everything changed overnight. What started as a dusty garage on the edge of Dallas was now the heartbeat of a show broadcast in over 200 countries and translated into 13 languages. Suddenly, Rawlings wasn't just the guy under the hood. He was a brand, a personality, a global face for American car culture. The show's hook was simple: find old cars, usually forgotten, rusted, or wrecked, then bring them back to life and sell for profit. But what made it addictive wasn't just the metal, it was the movement. The builds were fast, the editing snappy, the tone light-hearted but real. With the show's success, Rawlings expanded far beyond the screen. Gas Monkey grew into restaurants, bars, clothing lines, energy drinks, even vodka and tequila. What started as a garage became a lifestyle. But underneath the expansion was a strategy, what Rawlings called the cash money formula. Buy smart, sell smarter. He often traveled with tens of thousands of dollars in cash, ready to close deals on the spot. One of his favorite lines summed it up: "You can always buy a $10,000 car for $5,000 if you've got it in your pocket." That formula wasn't just theory, it worked. In one standout flip, he snagged a beat-up Dodge Challenger for a little over $40,000. After pouring in $77,000 worth of restoration, custom parts, killer paint, and unique upgrades, they sold it for a jaw-dropping $150,000. That was a $73,000 win on a single build. And not every gamble paid off, but the risks were part of the ride. What made Fast and Loud so compelling wasn't perfection. It was pressure. Rawlings was known for taking chances on vehicles most wouldn't touch. Frames rusted through, engines frozen, electricals shot. His crew often doubted the decisions, but Rawlings had a way of seeing value where others saw scrap. One time, he bought a supercar for $400,000 that had major mechanical issues, written off by its previous owner. Gas Monkey turned it around and made it profitable. Those high-stakes flips gave the show depth. Each car had a story. Each restoration had drama. And not every ending was a fairy tale. Some cars took too long. Others barely broke even. But that was the point. It wasn't just about the wins, it was about the process, the grit, the grind. Viewers saw the stress, the setbacks, the raw reality behind running a garage that never coasted. And just like that, what started with no plumbing and a few borrowed tools had become an empire on wheels. The Gas Monkey Empire, beyond the garage. From the moment Fast and Loud hit the airwaves in 2012, it captivated viewers with its unique mix of adrenaline-pumping builds and high-stakes deadlines. Over the years, the show evolved, drawing millions of fans with its unpredictable nature. By 2014, the series had hit its peak, with each episode filled with last-minute repairs, unexpected challenges, and the looming pressure of time. It was a formula that kept fans hooked, wondering whether Richard Rawlings and his team could pull off another miracle. Yet, by 2020, Rawlings was ready to break free. During an appearance on the Joe Rogan Experience, he revealed his decision to part ways with Discovery Channel. Tired of being locked into network contracts, Rawlings craved creative freedom and control over his future. It was a bold decision, one that many thought might backfire, but it opened new doors. He soon turned his attention to digital platforms, YouTube, and other new ventures, keeping Gas Monkey Garage alive and thriving in a world that was rapidly changing. Richard had already made a name for himself in the automotive world, but in 2013, he decided to take his brand further. That year, he opened the first Gas Monkey Bar and Grill in Northwest Dallas. Located in a 19,000-square-foot space that once housed Firewater Bar and Grill, the venue wasn't just another eatery. It was a vibrant fusion of a bar, a music venue, and a bold reflection of Rawlings' energetic brand. The space could hold up to 1,200 guests, and with the help of industry professionals like Alex Mendonça, who had previously managed the House of Blues, Rawlings turned the spot into a magnet for music lovers and foodies alike. The grand opening wasn't just a ribbon-cutting event. It kicked off with a live performance by the American rock band Old 97s, setting the tone for the venue's electric atmosphere. The success of the first location led to a second one in March 2014, this time at the Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport. Positioned in one of the busiest airports in the country, this new Gas Monkey Bar and Grill catered to travelers looking for a quick bite, a refreshing drink, and a taste of Rawlings' brand. This strategic move allowed Rawlings to tap into a different market, one with a steady stream of potential customers on the go. His vision didn't stop there, though. He hinted at the possibility of opening more locations beyond Dallas, eager to expand the Gas Monkey experience even further. But it wasn't just about food and drinks. Later in 2014, Rawlings opened Gas Monkey Live, a massive 38,000-square-foot concert venue just across from the original bar and grill. The venue was designed to accommodate 3,000 people, making it one of the largest and most exciting music spots in Dallas. Before Rawlings took over, it had been Toby Keith's I Love This Bar and Grill, but he transformed it into a powerhouse for live shows. Punk rock legends. Social Distortion kicked things off, and from there, Gas Monkey Live became the stage for some of the biggest names in music. The venue's most memorable moment came when Motley Crue performed there as part of their All Bad Things Must End tour. The event was exclusive to Dodge vehicle owners, showcasing the new Charger SRT Hellcat and Challenger SRT Hellcat models. It was the perfect fusion of music, cars, and raw energy. Despite its success, Gas Monkey Live couldn't survive the economic hit from the COVID-19 pandemic. In May 2020, the venue closed its doors, marking the end of an ambitious chapter in Rawlings' expansion into live entertainment. Yet, even with this setback, Rawlings' entrepreneurial spirit was far from dimmed. Back in 2014, Rawlings had secured another major milestone when he became the national spokesperson for Dodge. His familiar face, already a favorite from Fast and Loud, was now part of the iconic car brand's marketing campaign. The partnership was a perfect match, combining Rawlings' passion for cars with Dodge's cutting-edge performance. This collaboration reached its zenith during the Dodge Rocks Gas Monkey concert, held at his own venue. The event brought together everything Rawlings loved: cars, music, and high-energy entertainment in one unforgettable night. Rawlings' ventures didn't stop there. In 2019, he set his sights on the energy drink market. Instead of building a company from the ground up, he licensed the Gas Monkey brand, avoiding the financial risks of production while maintaining full control over its image. Gas Monkey Energy debuted with two bold flavors, regular and light, each one embodying the same speed, power, and excitement that defined Rawlings' brand. By 2025, a new tropical flavor was added to the lineup, a refreshing mix of mango, passion fruit, pineapple, lemon, and honey. It was a clean alternative to the usual sugary energy drinks, reflecting the healthy, fast-paced lifestyle that Rawlings championed. The drinks were sold at convenience stores, online, and at major motorsport events, including the Indianapolis 500 and NHRA races, further establishing Gas Monkey as a force in both the automotive and lifestyle sectors. Through it all, Rawlings has built an empire that goes far beyond the garage. What started as a small auto shop in Dallas has become a global brand that spans food, music, energy drinks, and more. The journey has been anything but predictable, driven by the same bold, risk-taking attitude that made Richard Rawlings a true icon of the automotive world. But with so many ventures in play, could one risky move finally bring it all crashing down? Stay tuned. What comes next might just shock everyone. The love that failed and the allure of the fast lane. Even before Fast and Loud introduced him to millions, Richard Rawlings was already racing through life with more ambition than stability. Long before Gas Monkey Garage roared to life and TV crews followed his every move, his first taste of commitment came in 1993. Back then, Richard was still trying to carve out his path in the car world when he married Karen K. Grahams. But whatever hope they had was short-lived. The marriage dissolved quietly by 1994, never making headlines, never becoming a talking point. There was no spotlight, no fanfare, just a young man chasing horsepower and dreams while his first relationship faded into the rearview mirror almost as quickly as it had appeared. That early heartbreak didn't stop him from trying again. By 1999, Richard took another shot at forever with Suzanne Marie Murrell. This time, the ceremony took place in Las Vegas, the city of risks, fitting for a man who thrived on high stakes. Things were looking up professionally. Gas Monkey Garage was picking up steam, and Richard's dream of building a car empire was slowly turning real. But as business surged, personal life struggled to keep up. The demands of running a garage, chasing cars, and living on the road began to take their toll. After a decade of trying to juggle both worlds, the couple divorced in 2009. Their story, however, didn't end there. In 2015, 6 years after their separation, Richard and Suzanne reunited in Cabo San Lucas, Mexico, hoping for a do-over. With new experiences behind them and a sense of maturity that only time can offer, they decided to marry once more. It was a bold move, a second chance wrapped in hope. But by March 2019, reality caught up with them again. In a public post on Twitter dated March 11th, Rawlings shared the news of their separation, noting that media outlets were already circling. He wanted fans to hear it from him directly. It was mutual, it was respectful, and it was final. Despite the split, he spoke warmly about their bond. Over 20 years of loving, leaving, and trying again. The divorce moved fast, with Suzanne receiving a $300,000 settlement and keeping her Mercedes SL 450 Roadster. It wasn't a bitter end, just a quiet acknowledgement that love alone wasn't enough to hold them together. Not long after, another name entered the picture: Katerina Deason. Known in high society circles as the former wife of billionaire Darwin Deason, whose tech company sold to Xerox for a staggering $6 billion, Katerina had spent years amidst opulence, private jets, luxury yachts like the Apogee, and a life dripping with excess. But everything changed. In 2019, Richard and Katerina began dating soon after his split from Suzanne, and things escalated quickly. On August 17th, at the scenic Tulum Resort in Mexico, he proposed, the beach littered with rose petals, and the moment splashed across social media. Less than a year later, on June 28, 2020, they tied the knot in a quiet ceremony in Key West, Florida. Downsized due to the pandemic, but no less heartfelt. Katerina had traded billionaires for a bearded Texan with grease-stained hands and roaring engines, finding in Rawlings a new kind of thrill. Gas Monkey unleashed battle against Richard Rawlings. In June 2018, the world of custom cars took a sharp turn no one saw coming. Gas Monkey Bar and Grill, Dallas's buzzing hotspot, and an extension of the larger-than-life Gas Monkey empire, filed a staggering $6 million defamation suit against its own founder, Richard Rawlings. For fans who had followed his high-octane journey through Fast and Loud, it was hard to reconcile the TV charm with the legal drama unfolding behind the scenes. But the truth was, the cracks had started forming long before the bar's grand opening in 2013. Emails from that time described Rawlings as volatile on site, likening his behavior to a temperamental teen, even resulting in him being banned from the construction zone. It was more than a personality clash. It was a power struggle already smoldering. As time went on, the internal fires only burned hotter. Rawlings allegedly bulldozed into meetings uninvited, attempted to override decisions, and created a work culture laced with tension. In 2015, things hit a new low. Accusing his business partner Daniel Flaherty of hiding financial records, Rawlings refused an invitation to inspect the books, and instead insisted the documents didn't exist, a bold claim teetering on an accusation of fraud. Flaherty's reply, an email stating Rawlings always had access, became pivotal in the courtroom drama that followed. Though Rawlings would later blame his outbursts on drinking, the damage had been done. The lawsuit claimed his actions chased off vendors and potential buyers. One 2017 deal for the brand fell apart after Rawlings again raised concerns about mismanagement. And by early 2019, he escalated things further by launching a $1 million countersuit, claiming the bar was illegally using the Gas Monkey name after licensing agreements expired. His legal team argued that not only was his intellectual property being exploited, but his reputation was being dragged through the mud, especially as the venue hosted racy, off-brand events. Rumors swirled. Was Rawlings distancing himself from a sinking ship? In reality, things were far from stable behind the curtain. Insiders whispered of mounting legal costs, investor exits, canceled deals, and internal shakeups. Rawlings was bleeding cash while smiling for the cameras. The charismatic figure cruising in a restored Camaro was, at times, parking that same car outside a lawyer's office. The empire he'd spent years building now stood on shaky ground. And it wasn't just his business taking the hit. The weight of it all began to crack his personal life too. His second marriage to Katerina Dyson ended quietly in 2023. There were no tabloid explosions, but those close to him say the signs were always there. Between filming, legal battles, and endless travel, Rawlings admitted he simply wasn't present. "The people closest to you get the least of you," he confessed. As lawsuits piled up and the TV spotlight dimmed, he found himself not just battling for a brand, but for his identity. In a bid to reclaim his narrative, Rawlings sold nearly 30 of his personal cars in September 2023, raising over $1 million. It wasn't just a financial move, it was symbolic. Letting go of the vehicles was about clearing space, wiping the slate, and rediscovering what he truly wanted. His prized 1993 Toyota Supra fetched $121,000, leading the pack, while a Gas Monkey garage experience auctioned for charity brought in another $16,500. Then came the pivot. With fresh funds and renewed clarity, he began reinvesting in high-end European models, particularly vintage Ferraris and Lamborghinis from the 70s and 80s. One standout moment? A trip to Ireland, where he bought 5 Ferrari Testarossas, including an electric converted model that stole the show at SEMA 2023. Now operating independently, Rawlings launched his own content series across YouTube and social media. Unfiltered, unscripted, and unchained from network politics. But what do you think pushed Richard Rawlings from roaring success to legal chaos and reinvention? We'd like to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.